Ladies and gentlemen, we now have candidates for position 2 and 3 of the Olympia City Council. Each candidate will have an opportunity for a 2-minute introduction and to state why they are the most qualified person for the position. So I'd love to start right here with Jessica Bateman.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Jessica Bateman. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Olympia, and I'm running for re-election to the Olympia City Council. From organizing home care workers while working for SEIU 775, to empowering at-risk youth while working for GRUB, to leading the campaign to pass the Home Fund, I have experience building broad coalitions in our community to improve the lives of Olympians. I'm the daughter of working family parents, a first-generation college graduate, and was raised by my single mom. I went to the Evergreen State College and earned my graduate degree in public administration, and I went on to work before I came to council as a legislative assistant for Representative Chris Rakedahl. I also worked as an organizer for SEIU 775, and I am a former WFC 443 member. Before serving on the Olympia City Council, I also served on the board of GRUB and on the Olympia Planning Commission for over 2 years. I've lived here for over a decade, since 2007, and I've got over a decade of policy experience in public relations and health policy. I currently work as a policy analyst for community health centers in Washington State, where I work to ensure that everybody has access to health care regardless of their ability to pay. And I am running because we have a lot more work to do, and I have the experience, the policy skills, and the approach needed to move us forward. Thank you.
My name is Alyssa Humbert, and I'm running for Olympia City Council, position 2. I currently serve on the board of the Family Support Center of South Sound, which provides resources and support to homeless families and those who have been affected by domestic violence and trauma. I also serve on the board of my local neighborhood association, and I volunteer with the Washington Trails Association, maintaining trails, as well as conservation and stewardship in greater Washington State, as well as locally here in Olympia. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my young son is my passion for making sure that Olympia remains safe and sustainable and inclusive. I want him to grow up to love Olympia just as much as I do, and for his children to grow up and love Olympia. So he is my reason for running. And I have a background in working with special education children. I also managed a children's literacy nonprofit. So I have hands-on experience working with children, as well as the disabled, immigrant and refugee populations, low-income populations, as well as populations with low literacy rates. As someone who's worked in a nonprofit, I know how to come up with creative solutions on a budget or with no money at all. So that's why I think that I would be a great person to be on the Olympia City Council. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Booth, and I arrived in Thurston County in 1990 with a 3-month-old preemie baby. From there, I went to churches and volunteered to help single mothers go to church, and I was their babysitter. Before I came to Olympia, I was active in trying to prevent the third runway in SeaTac, and I have spent probably my entire life doorbelling as a former Girl Scout who was a top cookie seller. I got very interested in how Olympia City Council operated. So I appointed myself as a watchdog in 1998, and I went to every council meeting up until 2005 when I decided to run for office. I have been very active in a variety of things, American Red Cross, the hospice. I have done a lot of rallying of people, thousands, to Olympia City Council. Lately, I have worked 17 months against the missing middle, which is city-sponsored gentrification, and I am continuing that work, and I will be voting no on 1923 bill that I also followed, because in that bill, unfortunately, your rights as citizens have been cut out in the building planning process. I'm pretty active. I think some people would call me Magnolia Steel. I have a southern accent. I'm from Nashville. I have nursing training. I am a volunteer with the Olympia Free Clinic presently, and I have worked with the homeless for about 30 years. And my husband and I are tiny house hero winners. We fund a tiny home there, and I worked on the Keoki Village effort. It was a camp then, since 2007. And before that, I worked in the churches, housing the homeless during the winter time. And I'm a funder as well. And I just really care about this area. And I want citizens to have the knowledge of how to be effective with the city council. So I'm going to throw a few terms at you. SEPA, determination of non-significance. Public comment, what does it mean? That's what you're going to get from me. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Boudicca Walsh. I am running for Olympia City Council position 3. Why am I running? Well, a little bit about me. I am one of the former chairs of Thurston County Democrats, which I learned a lot. I have been an activist for social justice, focusing mainly on the houseless for the last 3 years. I've been an advocate for trans protection since high school, and I believe I'm the most qualified because I live the real Olympian experience, struggling with rent, struggling with job security. It is hard. I know that some of y'all might not know, but it's, our wages aren't allowing us to live in our city anymore. And, more and more people are being pushed out onto the street. In the last 2 years, have either been unhoused or had to face being unhoused. And, having lived this experience and lived it very recently, I want to bring that real life knowledge to the city council. And also, I was the first trans chair of our county political party in Washington State, and I hope to be the first trans woman elected to public office in Washington State. So please consider voting for me, Boudicca Walsh, Olympia City Council position 3. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Matt Goldenberg. I'm running for Olympia City Council position 3. I am a clinical psychologist and a trauma specialist. I specifically treat people who are suffering trauma from oppression. When I'm not doing that, I'm a racial equity trainer. I've had several contracts with school boards as well as with state agencies. So my job is to go in and train people about what racial equity looks like. I also do gender equity training. When I'm not doing that, I'm a community college professor. I'm an AFT union member. So this is part of what brings me into running for city council. My whole career, I've had this crisis of generativity. It's like what I do is just not reaching enough, enough focus. It feels like our problems, especially as a millennial, are so overwhelming. And there's always going to be people who are going to be willing to run into the fire. And there's going to be people behind them who are just kind of telling them where to go. I'm a run in the fire kind of guy, right? So that's how I started in a community college myself. I went and got my bachelor's, I got a master's, I got a second master's and a doctorate. Nobody's as educated me as my family, but what that means is that I've elevated the possibilities for my own children, who are 3 and 7, right? So for me, when I am thinking about why I'm running, one, because a lot of people are talking about how we need to work with the social service providers. Well, you should have a social service provider on the council, right? Who can know effectively how to work with those folks. I've also worked with 3 different houseless agencies in a Housing First policy. I was on King County's first mobile crisis team, right? So when we're looking at expanding beyond the Housing First policy, we ought to have people who've done the work and who know the language. So I ask for your vote, Matt Goldenberg, position 3 in Olympia City Council.
Hi, my name's Dani Madrone. I'm running for Olympia City Council position 3. I became active in the community when I became a mother and realized that the world was kind of unraveling around us. And for over 10 years now, I've been working on issues of climate, housing, sustainable transportation, farmland preservation, food systems, Puget Sound recovery. I currently work for treaty tribes on Puget Sound recovery, and I do many other things out in the community. I'm running for Olympia City Council because I am concerned about issues around housing and homelessness. My daughter and I once shared a single bedroom so that we could stay in Olympia and I could finish college. We later lived in a basement apartment that was affordable for us but not legal in the city of Olympia. And then when I finally got a job working, making middle-class wages, we still had trouble finding housing in Olympia. So that's something I'm particularly passionate about. I have experience working on the Deschutes Estuary issue. I worked on that for a couple of years, working with the community, working with the city council to support removing the dam downtown, and I even advocated specifically on the comprehensive plan so that we got changes around that to make sure that the city supports science-based decision-making. And I'm really interested in having better conversations in Olympia. There's a lot of divisiveness going on, and I think that local government should serve a purpose in helping people find shared interests and shared values. A lot of that can happen through public process, and you don't always get that at 3 minutes at the podium. So those are some of my interests, and I look forward to talking more with the rest of this forum.
Thank you to all of our wonderful candidates. Thank you, Dani, for bringing up the damned Capitol Lake. Excuse me. Yeah.
It's an open seat. It's Nathaniel Jones's seat. Yeah. He's running for mayor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. For the record, position 3 is an open seat. So we have, again, the Progressive Policy Pledge and the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. I'm not going to read them again, but I'd love to give our candidates a chance to state their positions on both. So would you like to start again, Jessica?
So I don't have it in front of me if I could see it. So I definitely will be signing this pledge. I'm on the record supporting a $15 hour minimum wage. The Olympia City Council's Finance Committee is currently looking at an economic assessment of our community. We've been pretty busy with homelessness for the last couple of years, and that's an issue that's just come back to our finance committee. So we also just hired a policy analyst, 2 different firms, and that's going to be one of their first assignments, is taking a look and assessing our current economic situation in our community, doing an assessment of the employers' wages, and looking at options for us to move forward on that. I work in the healthcare industry, and it's so frustrating to see the amount of work and effort that goes just into billing and figuring out how to process billing codes. Medicare for all is something that I support. Healthcare is a human right, and I absolutely support that. I think that the Green New Deal is a great opportunity for us to not only address our future energy concerns and address climate change, but also restructure our economy in clean jobs and workforce development. You know, we're dealing with a housing crisis where a lot of people can't afford to live in the very houses that we're building in our community, and I think that's a really good opportunity there. And also college for all. I sold my first house a couple years ago. I bought it as a short sale in the recession. And when I did that, I got a rather large check, and most of that check went to paying off my student loans. And I would really love to have a community and a state and a country where people didn't have to put themselves in debt for the rest of their lives in order to pay off their student loans. And a constitutional amendment to ban the private financing of elections. I definitely support that. I know there's a state-by-state effort to do that. I also think that public financing of campaigns is one of the best ways that we can move forward, like they did in Seattle. It's really, really hard to run campaigns. As all of us know, it's expensive, and anyone should be able to run for office regardless of who they know and how much money they can raise. Thank you.
So my name is Alyssa Humbert, and I'm running for Olympia City Council position 3, and I am endorsed by position 2, sorry, and I am endorsed by the Washington State Progressive Caucus. So to all these, I say yes. $15 minimum wage, yes. I fight for a single-payer Medicare for all, yes. And I want that to include medical and mental health care, physical therapy, chiropractic, acupuncture. I want it to include paid family leave. I want it to include childcare. I want it to be comprehensive, vision, dental, everything. Let's see. Greenhouse. I already signed the pledge not to accept contributions from the fossil fuel industry, so that's done. Free college for all. I agree with that, and I agree with Mayor Selby that it should include the trades. The Carpenters Union told us that the apprenticeship programs are not publicly funded. So I think, the vocational trades, we also need to support those. And I want money out of politics. I want money completely out of politics. So yes to everything.
First of all, I'd like for the people who helped put this agenda on the map to stand up, especially those ones who worked for Bernie when he was at 3%. Can you stand up? They're in the back. Okay. Thank you. Some of us worked very hard every day to put this agenda on the map, and I'm glad it's become a national conversation. And I was a part of that effort. The free college is one of the things that I just, I can't believe we're in a society where we're looting our own young people. I did a little research. It's $110 billion over the next decade that the federal government will make off of our young people trying to pursue their dreams. We've turned it into a commodity. The $15 wage, I remember making $2.50 an hour at Opryland in Nashville, and I was able to go to Tennessee Tech University by saving every check. And I'm ashamed that our young people don't have the same opportunities, and will certainly work to rectify that. Medicare for all, I can't tell you how many patients I see in my work where they don't even have enough insulin. We've just commodified our society, and that's one of the reasons I'm running for office. I mean, you just get tired of speaking truth to power and going to numerous hearings, pushing, and I just thought, I want to be on the other side of the chair. Thank you.
All right. So I do like this, and I am going to sign this. I would like to say, though, that I don't think that it goes far enough. As for the first bullet point, we truly need liberation from capitalism. There is no path forward if we rely on the market to decide the direction of how our society goes, and that requires workers owning the means of their own workplaces. But at the very minimum, if we are going to continue in this capitalist system, we do need to ensure that everyone has a living wage, regardless if you're working for McDonald's or you're working as a caregiver. You deserve to be able to live on the work that you make. As for single-payer Medicare for all, absolutely yes. As someone who has had to go through several different insurances when I change jobs or change locations, and it always sets my life into kind of chaos, because as someone who takes psychoactive medications for my mental illness, I need consistency, and I lose that every time my insurance changes, or having to wait between when different jobs offer you insurance means that I don't know when my next refill is going to be, and yeah, that's intolerable. I definitely pledged to fight for a 10-year plan to mobilize every aspect of American society. I think that part of that mobilization of and change of every aspect of American society is going to be liberation from capitalism. I pledge to fight for free college for all. I also want to have all college debt forgiven. I think that people are drowning in debt, and they need to get a new lease on life. And of course, getting corporate money out of politics, absolutely. Citizens United was a mistake. Corporations are not people. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm Matt Goldenberg, running for position number 3. Quite a number of the bullet points in this progressive policy are actually in my platform at www.electmattgoldenberg.com. So I would really invite everyone to see some more of those details because I'll have little time to talk about these things. The $15 minimum wage is already part of my platform. Absolutely feel strongly about pro-labor and making sure that everybody has a livable wage. I've already endorsed the whole Washington platform, and that came when I was endorsed by the Washington State Progressive Caucus. It's also part of why I've not been taking money from elected officials in terms of this particular race, because there's this thing in psychology, we call it the principle of reciprocity. And if you feel like you owe something to someone, you're more likely to agree with them. Okay, now we have elected officials who are not backing up whole Washington, who are not backing up Medicare for all and are steeped in money from the healthcare insurance industry as well as big oil. So there is a trickle-down effect. And that is why my campaign is a progressive rent campaign, and I'm looking for individual contributions to get the money out of the platform from the beginning, right? Because that integrity counts. As a community college professor, I would love to spend more time talking to you about college for all and why that's important. Okay, I'm somebody with a massive amount of student debt. My mom's here, so I'm not gonna say how much it is, but I'm telling you it's a lot. It's a lot, 3 digits. Sorry, Mom, but that's the truth, right? So, and particularly because what I realize is that there's very little motivation for people in my generation to go up to get masters and doctorates when you know that you're gonna be steeped in this debt. This also has something to do, thank you, with why I'm so interested in the Medicare for all. I'm a healthcare provider, right? And I'm telling you about the number of calls I get from people who are desperate for a provider. I'm one of the only psychologists in the city that takes Medicaid and Medicare. I do that even though the reimbursements are really low, right? Because I'm getting 5 calls a week, even when I tell people I'm full and people are begging for some kind of mental health provider. There are very few of us in this town, right? So the idea of expanding so that we have a single payer will hugely benefit us as providers, because right now the competition for those reimbursement rates is quite high. From between a private sector or a private insurance company, I'm going to get twice on that hour than I do from Medicaid. And this is why providers don't want to work with Medicaid. Thanks.
So I'll save us a bit of time here, and I read this right when I got here and haven't looked too closely at what that plays out to, and I'm sure there's more on the website, but I support all of these things as federal policies, and I just want to focus on the 10-year plan to mobilize us to net zero greenhouse gas emissions, and we'll probably get into that a little bit more in the questions later, but I am really interested in climate policy with the city of Olympia. I think that's one of the strongest things that we can do from this list directly with local government, especially with the climate action plan that the city council is currently working on with TRPC and Lacey and Tumwater. And I would like to see us working on changing our transportation systems, retrofitting old buildings, producing energy locally so that we can be doing our part. And I think that's something that's particularly actionable on this list. But I support it all. I've also got a lot of student debt, not as much as this guy, but.
Thank you so much for your introductions. I like all of you. So here's one question, and this is a question, I love you very much. So here's your first question for all of you. Where do you stand on tenant protection rights and also the lack of that we have here in our city?
Thank you. So I support increasing our tenant protection rights. There was a bill that passed in the legislature this year that gives people a little bit more time. But right now, the cities of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater are working, and we have a newly formed, hopefully, council on housing that was formerly the ad hoc committee on housing that worked and was influential with some of our housing policies. But they're actually working on a 3-city increased tenant protection policy that would go even further. I haven't seen the details of it yet. Each city could go even further individually. But what I'm really interested in, I had a neighbor of mine that received a 20-day vacate notice after living in the same home for 12 years. One of their children was on the spectrum. They had to try to find where they were going to come up with first, last, and deposit, which could be up to $5,000 in a 3% vacancy rate market. And it was extremely upsetting to that family to think about how are they going to get their kids into the same school and what are they going to do. 20 days is not enough. So in Seattle, they give you extra time. It's, I believe, 60 days for no cause eviction. So if you're being evicted for no cause at all, you're going to get 60 days. I'd like to see us do that, or even 90 days, because people need that extra time to be able to get that money and also look for, I mean, even if you have the money, it could be more difficult to find. It's more difficult to find one. So I am absolutely supportive. I was a renter for years up until I bought my first home, and I understand how difficult it is to find rents in this market.
I am in support of protecting and enhancing tenants' rights, especially because as I've been talking to members of the community, housing is such a big issue. I'm hearing from working families whose rents are rising, but their wages are not rising to accommodate the rising cost of living. And it breaks my heart to hear these stories. And so I'm pushing for affordable housing and also the rights of tenants. I would love to see an Office of Civil Rights to protect those rights of marginalized groups, because these are people who are especially targeted by the different rules of renters and the housing. I believe in housing first as a solution to the homelessness issue, because with housing, many other pieces of your life can be stable. You are led on a path to success. So yes, I am all for protecting tenants and keeping those rights and enhancing those. Families do not deserve to be kicked out on the streets, especially during the winter time when the weather is rough. I mean, that's just it's heartless to do that to families. And I'm hearing these stories left and right from all the people that I'm talking to. So yes, I want to see more notice from those who operate and own the building, from property owners, for people before they get evicted, and let's see some leeway with people who have lived in a building for years and years. I mean, if they lapse once, they need to be given a break. They've been committed to your building and your property. Thank you.
I remember the tenant rights issue came in the early 90s when I was going to the city council meetings. It was Forest Glen Apartments, and they came and expressed what was going on, and they came again, and they came again, and it just didn't seem to matter to the city council at the time. And I've noticed with the homeless coming to the city councils recently, the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, imagine the efforts it takes to come to a city council meeting. And so I'm stretching the definition of tenants. I don't think that we've done right by our homeless by just saying, hey, it's time to sweep you, even if it's 3 weeks. I know that one near the bus terminal, it was shortly after the big snow. That's pretty traumatic. I think one of the best landlords is off of Pacific. He's a nice landowner who has allowed the campers to live there for 5 or 6 years that I know of. And they have not had to worry as much about sweeps as other places. We've got to have more conversations about what's going on in our society. The wages have been cut for the last 40 years. I'm a tail-end boomer. I did all the things they told you to do. Don't have a baby early. Don't waste your money. And it was still pretty rough. I landed in a house in SeaTac that had the kitchen sink in the front yard. And so the generations behind me have had it a lot worse. So I did attend the legislative hearing on rent control and listened to multiple people from all over the state saying, you know, our rent just went up $200 or $300, but our wages didn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Hello. So this is a very important topic as someone who has been renting apartments in Olympia. I believe we need to have a tenant's bill of rights. We also need to have a municipal housing authority. The Thurston County Housing Authority has been lobbied for quite some time to actually build publicly owned, rent-controlled units in our county, but they have yet to do so. And I think that we on the city level can take a bold step here and start to actually provide that, because it's needed. Having worked as a caregiver for seniors and adults with developmental disabilities, I see people who are making maybe $700 a month, off of Social Security, being asked to find some kind of housing in this market. And where is it? Do any of you know a place where you can live for less than a third of that? Because it's not out there. So I think that we need to think dynamically about how we can change the way that we rent apartments. I would love it if low-income housing was not defined by some market mean, but rather as a third of your income. Can you imagine if, when you signed a lease, you only had to pay a third of your income, and then that would allow people from all sorts of income levels in order to not only live somewhere, but then also have enough money to eat, pay electricity bills, and do all those other sorts of things. And so I encourage everyone here to think dynamically about what we can do to protect renters.
Hi, okay, so Matt Goldenberg again, position 3, still here. So I wanted to mention there's a few things in my platform on the website that you can read about. One is to install and encourage a tenants union. I'm also very interested in extending time to respond to an eviction. I'm also very interested in coming up with ways that we can limit the cost and the utility of credit check background checks on potential tenants. That's a huge cost for people that I think we really need to get a hand of. Now, there's another piece of this. When we talk about houselessness, if you are spending time with the community, you're going to see that there's a lot of folks who think that we have neighbors who are disposable, right? And you hear a lot about sweep away. Now, here's the thing. People talk about this as a way to protect our own economic anxiety, right? Because if we can scapegoat that those people who are houseless are on drugs, I'm not on drugs, that means that I'm okay, right? And we do this to protect ourselves from our own anxiety of becoming potentially houseless. But the truth of it is, people who are houseless are a huge different community, very many demographics, right? We certainly have people who are drug addicted. We also have a huge portion of people who are LGBT kids who were rejected from their homes. We have seniors, we have women who are fleeing domestic violence, and we have a huge population that's insecurely housed, right? So folks who are not quite on the street, but just about to be there. So we need to have a comprehensive plan that touches all of these aspects. The final part is that we need to incorporate racial equity. Racial equity is a huge part of my platform. Here's why. Do you know the majority of people of color in Washington state live in 3 counties? Yep, Pierce, Snohomish, King. The only thing that separates that from us from them is opportunity. Okay, when we talk about building housing for families, we need to make sure that we're giving some kind of income, right? Some kind of equity that's available to make sure that we're housing that full community, right? We need to look at the reasons why our state people of color do not feel welcome here and do not see that opportunity. So I would very much like to make sure that when we talk about housing affordability, we're looking at what I would call an intersectional lens. So we're looking at all the different people who are impacted by these policies. Thanks.
So I have tenant protections specifically on my platform, and in addition to some of the work that Jessica mentioned, where Tumwater's kind of taking the lead on more time for no-fault evictions and rent increases, and that's tri-city work that is taking place with Tumwater, Olympia, and Lacey. I'm also interested in a landlord registry, and this is something that's been done up in Bellingham, and it's not an adversarial renter versus landlord thing. It's a landlord is required to register their home, and it gets inspected when it's registered, and then every 3 years after that. So we know that a renter is living in a safe space. There can be something in it for the landlord as well, where maybe they get access to background checks or something like that. But that ensures that there is that the housing is safe for renters. And I would also like to see connected to that some sort of ombuds office, because right now, if a tenant has an issue with a landlord, the person who has more power in the situation is the person who owns the property. And the only way to resolve that is through the courts. And if you don't have the resources to go to small claims or to defend yourself through through tenant protections, then you don't have protection. So an ombuds office with Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, it's got to be all of us, because if just Olympia is doing it, then there's going to be inequities around this. And to build a bit on renter protections, I'm also interested in looking at short-term vacation rentals like Airbnbs and seeing what kind of policies we need to put in place locally to make sure that we're not losing long-term rentals to short-term vacation. And that's not to vilify those who do have Airbnb units, because some people use that and that's how they stay in their homes, is by having some income that way. But figuring out what's fair in Olympia. And I'm also interested in looking at vacancies that could be housing renters. And if there are places in Olympia that are vacant and could have somebody there, is it possible for us to collect some kind of tax that could at least go to building more housing to make up for that? Thank you.
So in the interest of time, we're going to move to a 1 minute answer for 2 last questions. And this time I'm going to start with you, Dani. Just a warning. So this question was audience submitted question posed to all the candidates tonight. And it is, what is your position on capitalism?
Well, I think in a system of capitalism, you're always going to have people who are poor. That's how it's set up. That's the system that we're in right now, and it's unfair and unjust. And because we're in that system, and transitioning from that is a long, lengthy process, I'm really interested in seeing how we can take care of the people who have fallen through the cracks. And also making sure that we are offering social services within our capitalist system to be able to do that.
Well, certainly capitalism is a part of all of these major issues we're talking about, whether we're talking about climate justice or housing or racial equity, access to education. So it's touching on all of these things. My sense is that we built this system and we can find our way out. But we're not going to do that unless you bring in progressive candidates like me. So thank you.
Only a minute. Okay. Capitalism is the source of all inequality in our global society. We need to move to liberate all people from under it. And the only way through that is with solidarity through working people, amongst people who are oppressed. And once we are able to, get free from the shackles of capitalism, then we can actually start to resolve a lot of these problems, because I don't believe that capitalism is something that's fixable. I believe it's something that needs to be replaced.
I believe we're in the era of cutthroat capitalism. When I was a child growing up in the 70s, I thought by now most of us would be working part-time jobs with full benefits. Capitalism has some good aspects if it's used correctly and moderately, but we're seeing the results of massive poverty in America. Half of America is poor now, and this model of having billionaires own everything, I mean, we don't even have a democracy here in America, so I think capitalism needs to go to sleep for a while. Thank you.
So it just so happened before the week for filing, I had read Elizabeth Warren's book, and I was like, she makes some good points. Well, then after that, I read Bernie Sanders' books, and I was like, yeah, Bernie Sanders, he has it right. So that was my inspiration for filing to run for Olympia City Council, and these guys up here, the ultra wealthy, the big corporations, they're protecting themselves, and they don't care about the workers. And that's why I love talking to the union, the carpenters union today. I'm a big fan of unions, and I think we owe a lot to unions, and we need to continue to protect them and enhance their rights. As I mentioned, or maybe I didn't, my mom is a United States Postal Service letter carrier, and I'm so dang proud of her. And I love the post office, okay? Can you imagine if Amazon ran the post office? Sure, some things would be better, more efficient, but we would be assaulted by ads. And I worry about my son being assaulted by ads all the time, right? So I'm not a fan of capitalism, and we need to be doing a better job of helping each other.
So wealth inequality is one of the defining issues of our time, and I think that businesses and corporations need to be paying their fair share versus giving them just huge tax breaks. So many of the issues that we're dealing with locally are the result of a broken social safety net. We are the most regressive in the nation for how we tax people. We do not have an income tax. This city council has lobbied year after year for a progressive tax in our state. They did do some progressive taxes this last legislative session, but we didn't see a capital gains tax, and we still don't have an income tax. Until we have progressive taxation in Washington, we're going to be seeing people competing for scarce resources year after year after year. And all the work that we've done, we've really tried to build that system locally, but we're a progressive city and we have supportive citizens, and there are other cities that don't. So it's really at the state level that we need to have that happen.
Thank you, Jessica, and to the rest of the candidates. So here's one more question. What makes you a progressive Democrat? And we'll begin with you.
Well, I think that what makes me a progressive Democrat is many of the reasons that we signed on to that pledge today. And I believe that people that are working full-time shouldn't be living in poverty. I believe that everyone should have access to health care, and they shouldn't be dependent on whether or not they have the finances to actually do that. I work for community health centers, and they're one of the largest providers of health care to Medicaid patients in the state. I also believe that everyone should have access to quality education. I went to public schools. I'm the daughter of 2 union parents. I went to a public college. I went to community college. And I want everyone to have those opportunities. And I think that we're stronger when we work together. And I'm excited about what we can do together. So thanks.
I'm a progressive candidate because I support the Green New Deal. I am a huge supporter of unions. I love unions and workers. I want more protections for our healthcare system. My God, our healthcare system needs so much work. And I am a person of color. I want to see our governments representing everyone in the community. We need diversity and inclusivity. And I want my son to be able to grow up and see our leaders that look like him as well. And everyone deserves to be at the table. Everyone has a voice, and everyone deserves to be heard. So I want to fight for everyone. I loved meeting the carpenters today, and I want to hear from all of you, and I want to fight for all of you.
I'm a progressive Democrat by my actions. I think at most points in my life, I have thought of the public good. I went out and gathered 3,000 signatures to stop a corporate conference center that would have looted the city of Olympia $1 million a year, and it would have hurt their ability to pay union workers. I fought for the views around the Capitol when they were trying to get the height limits raised and sell it to big developers so that everyone can see it. I've supported union wage jobs through my purchases. I've just really been interested in democracy. Even in my work with the Thurston County Democrats, one of the first things I did as Legislative District 22 chair is to make sure that people start studying Robert rules so they can participate in meetings. Thank you.
So I was the Thurston County chair of Thurston County Democrats, and while I was there, I helped to write the platform. I helped the body endorse the House's Bill of Rights, so I hope that my record as a progressive kind of speaks for itself. As far as whether I can say that I am a Democrat, I honestly have been having a lot of soul searching about this, because I have been really disheartened with seeing the Democratic Party turn towards partisanship over principles. To see the way I was a Bernie delegate on the municipal and county level, and to see the way that he was treated and people within the party were treated, to see the way now that Democrats locally and abroad continue to betray the interests and the promises of the people that work so hard to get them elected. I don't know that I qualify as a Democrat. I am a member of the Green Party, and if you want someone who represents the progressive Democrat values, that's me.
Okay, so to me, when you think about what makes a progressive, there's a strong bend towards believing people, right? When people say, I'm impacted negatively by this system, or I'm impacted negatively by this policy, strong progressives believe survivors. As a psychologist, that's what I make a living doing, right? Is hearing people's impacts and believing them. Also, you can notice that in my campaign, I've been working only on people power, and contributions are only from direct individuals who believe in my integrity and know that I can demonstrate the values of a progressive platform. So to me, I would say there's a lot of aspects to being a progressive that are very important, but probably the most primary characteristic is believing people. Okay, thanks.
I am a progressive Democrat because I have been raising my child in a culture of progressive activism for 12 years now. Almost 12, sorry. And I believe that people deserve to not only have their basic needs met, but also enjoy a high quality of life, no matter who you are or what your income is or where you live or where you are from. I believe that we should have access to be able to grow our own food and have that kind of sovereignty. I believe that we need bold actions around climate change. Climate change is real, and we need to act now. We need to recover Puget Sound, and those are issues that I will not back down from in terms of longer timeline needed for those. And yeah, I've been working on this community for a really long time on a variety of progressive issues, and I will continue to do so for the years to come.
Thank you, Dani, and to all the candidates. So here's the next question. How would you advocate for people of color to get a seat at the table and make decisions for the community?
Thank you. So at the City of Olympia, we have a couple different things we've been working on. One is going out into the community and changing the way that we have dialogue with our community members. This has been something councils have been working on for years. And recently we started going out into the community where people are and actively pursuing reaching people that don't come to city council meetings. So at the senior center, we've had a community conversation where we invited people. We provided childcare, we provided transportation, we had it facilitated. It was a very inclusive environment, and the city council members were instructed not to actually participate, just to listen. So I'd like to see that done and actually be centered around people of color so they can be at the table, they can provide input to us and let us know exactly what issues are impacting them. I'd also like to see us, we have on our Citizen Advisory Committee application process, we included diverse life experiences, but now that affirmative action has passed at the state level, I think we have more room to actually be proactive on that so we can get more people from diverse backgrounds and people of color on our Citizen Advisory Committees. Those are opportunities for people to get involved, to be a part of the decision-making process, making recommendations and analyzing plans and policies that we have, and many of them go on and actually run for office. I served on the Planning Commission for a number of years before being on City Council. I also think that we need to be more proactive in just getting out there and reaching out to everyone in our community, and yeah, that's where, thanks.
As you've noticed, I am a person of color, and so I think it would be important to have a person of color on our city council. And something that I would really push for is an Office of Civil Rights, because we need to educate the community, employers about civil rights and how to be treating each other and enforcing the protections of all groups, of especially the marginalized groups. I mean, we can't let people fall through the cracks anymore. No matter, we're all different. So, and we all have something that makes us unique, and we can't be looking at each other as if we're the same, because we're not. And so we need so this Office of Civil Rights would have a hotline to file claims and have an investigative team and open hearings for all parties involved so that we can continue to protect our civil rights. We really need to be working on diversity and inclusivity in Olympia, please. Thank you.
This one, I think I'm going to say personally, Keoki and Zahad and Victor and many other people that I have become very good friends with have influenced me as far as learning their life experiences through my friendships. As a Southerner out here, I've experienced a lot of discrimination because at a book club they'll say, are you kin to all the Klan members? or they'll say, are you a hillbilly and that sort of thing. So I actually relate to some degree. But with police actions, I am for a citizen review board. And it is going to be very diverse. And I was really affected when Keoki got up and spoke at our Democrat meeting. It's not going to be your child that's going to be shot. It's going to be my kid. And having those conversations and going to Zahad's deportation hearing and becoming very good friends with him, it's good to get out of our bubble and learn to step in somebody else's shoes. Thank you.
Before I announced that I was running, I met with Deb Lee because I wanted to get her insight, and we talked a bit about part of her platform, which was to have a civil rights commission. And I asked permission. Could I use that? Because I think that's exactly what we need, is something to investigate racism and discrimination that is happening. I don't know if all of you all know about Yvonne McDonald and the mysterious circumstances surrounding her death, that between what the city is saying and the real reports that the family has, it does not add up. And the way that I have seen Yvonne's family spoken to at city council meetings, being ignored, being told to look at records that they've pored over regularly, being told that people will get back to them or they'll look into it. And this is a family that lost a loved one. And so what I would do, Civil Rights Commission, fire Officer Donald Ryan, and yes, and get justice for Yvonne.
Okay, so as an anti-racist activist, one of my pieces on my platform is that City Council needs to have racial bias training. That is a hands-down winner. I think we could actually really easily work with the YWCA on that and some of their racial equity work. I would love to see that. The council meeting that Boudicca was just referencing showed that whatever advances have been made, as referred to by Councilwoman Bateman, there is still a major problem here when in a dissonance and an inability to discuss race where we most need to discuss it. So I would very much like to see all council people be required to do ongoing racial equity training as one part of the platform. I also have an idea that I'd like to share, and that is to encourage entrepreneurs of color into our downtown industry. We can have a way to partner with our credit unions and make sure that when we are talking about bringing in folks of color, that they don't just get to be employees, but they get to be owners.
Well, first, I recognize that Olympia is home of the people of Stachos, which is part of the Squaxin Island tribe. I have a good relationship with the tribe, and I am I know a lot of the issues that they're interested in terms of the city of Olympia, a lot of it doing with Puget Sound and salmon recovery. And I know that the tribe has a good relationship with the city of Olympia, and I would like to see that grow and continue. I am really interested in the idea of a human rights commission, something similar to what the city of Tacoma has set up, where there is a committee of diverse people who are appointed. And I think the first step in that would be for people in a committee like that, representing all sorts of identities that are marginalized in our community, to review all the policies and rules and laws in place at the city of Olympia to see where there are inequities, and also to be a committee that helps the community when we have acts of hate that take place or other things where we need to have a really good response to make sure that people are taken care of through those kinds of incidents.
Another round of applause for all of our candidates. And a round of applause for our organizers. And a round of applause for our videographer. Thank you all for coming.